Is this thing on? I think it is. I'm pretty sure, but I'm always waiting for one of you out there in Chatland, which I can barely see with the bubble it just did, to let me know that we're here, that the sound is working, and that we're ready to go. But because things are really changing this week, we're not streaming live quite the same way, although we are, but we're doing it a little bit different, not at the time we normally would be, nor can I promise it'll be at the same time anymore, because in order to make it all work and for StarFall 2029 to be all that it can possibly be, we had to shuffle the cards here in Rockford. And what that means is that we're aiming for a pretty strict podcast at this point. That StarFall 2029, Watching for Apophis, the game which gamifies your trust in Jesus Christ with the real world insanity that's going on around you, the magical realism of the evil one that has been defeated by the Bible, the good spell of Jesus Christ. I'm looking to see my chat's coming off. The internet seems to be having a problem, and so as I try to reboot here at this moment, I'm already throwing myself off. I'm glad you're all here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start over. Oh, hallelujah. We've had to shuffle things around here at the Fisk House. Why? Well, we've been talking to you about the bathroom for a while, right? But it's more than just that. The Hebrew Collegium, the Gap Year Bible School for Men, it's going well. We are not at capacity, neither are we without quite a bit going on. And the results of that among St. Paul Lutheran Church, sp815.org, also beginning to see visitation and new membership and babies. My workload is getting up there, and so is Meredith's, and we got kids in high school, and on and on and on. And it comes down to, at a certain point, and this is the one time I'm going to say this, we together just can't give the time. We can't give the time. But I am not going to back away from this final hurrah, because it's kind of been in my mind and in the back for a little bit here that StarFall 2029 is my last show. Not tonight's show. Tonight's show is episode what, like 222, 221? We got a whole bundle of episodes left until 4/13/2029. But that's what I'm saying, is that like right before Apophis like hits the planet and kills us all, I am pretty much going to stop doing podcasts officially. Is that okay with everyone? Do you think that'll be okay if we hit it at that point? So, from now until then, though, StarFall 2029 game show, it's on the way, where it's right here, ready to go tonight, is going to be here, but it's just going to be yours truly, Jonathan McAdam Fisk, Magistri Divinitatis, classic voice, law gospel voice, scripture alone voice, greatest Protestant hack on the internet. I think that's my favorite title yet. No one calls me magnanimous, although I've asked for it. I certainly have. But all this said, okay, so we are going to get ready for the regular recording and broadcasting of StarFall 2029 Fridays sometime, but it's really going to be out there as a podcast on Spotify. Share it with your friends. Tell them that this is the only place you're going to hear anybody talking like this anywhere in the world. A Gen X man talking about being a Gen X man in a world full of boomers and zoomers, without prejudice, without hate, with the love of Jesus Christ and the discipline of the sons of Solomon as a way to unify all of us under the headship of the King, who isn't so big on Marxism and dividing people by class warfare, right? Neither is he big on fathers forgetting their sons, nor is he big on sons disobeying their fathers. So, well, here we go, right? The Comets coming. Are we gonna get ready? A new wind, a new spirit is really blowing and brewing here in these United States of America. I mean, it really was an election for godliness. Say whatever else you will about Donald Trump. I'm not for the guy. I get accused of it. I like things about him. My kids are really into him, but I have some serious and generally reserved for myself skepticisms about our federal government, way beyond, Trump. And Trump himself, it's not exactly like I'm convinced he always is right about everything. What I can say is he doesn't like red at the bottom of the ledger. And the vote for, people's interests in their pocketbooks, which is effectively what this vote was, that vote was obvious. But underneath that vote, right, underneath people basically saying, I can't afford to live here anymore. You also had a large swell of people who would like to be one nation under God, who believe that being one nation under God is what we were born into. In our Lutheran schools in America, it's what we were taught to believe. You made me, quote Batman, and quote the Joker too, if I'm recalling. So what does it mean that we have raised a generation and a half to pledge allegiance to one nation under God, but the nation does not believe in God, to pledge allegiance to a republic under God, but the nation is not a republic? What do we do when we find out that the stories that they tell you aren't the real things that you find? When they sell you this, but they give you that and all this. I mean, I just am getting started here. Come right back.
What you're about to witness is one of the most sinister-sounding intros to a trailer to one of the greatest epics ever produced in the history of television.
Defense against the barbaric is vital. To fail, to prepare to defend, is to prepare for servitude. Sun Tzu, 1:1. Preparation or planning or strategy is the pursuit of a clear and proven framework for success. That is, to fight with understanding. That's 1:2. Understanding is built of words you assume to be true. That's 1:3. Whoever you claim to lead, if they will not follow you, you do not lead them. I find Sun Tzu to be truly fascinating. It is a study in Chinese for me at this point, although just barely dipping my finger into that tremendous ocean of information, but also a study in how good are you at reading between the lines. I mean, that's Chinese too, by the way. But how good are you at reading between the lines? Can you look at something written from a time that you were not born into, and can you understand why it's still here? Everyone wants to come out and say the old stuff's bad, blah, blah, blah. It's easy. It's easy to be a knee-jerk youngin' and be like, oh, I don't like it 'cause bad people old, blah, blah. You know who first said that? You know who started the tradition of bad people stupid? They were called the boomers. And it went like this. They said, trust no one over 30. They were saying in the 60s. What now? What now, brown cow? How do we deal with this? Well, let me tell you, you begin by understanding that the inheritance of rebellion is a lousy one, and it's one to give up. Don't rebel against rebellion. Stop rebelling, right? Cease your warfare against what? Against the God of nature. Hello. Yeah. Against the God of creation, against the God who is the Father of the Lord Jesus Christ, who's risen from the dead. Like all of that. Like, don't rebel against God. Instead, find that there is peace and certainty in the order that he has given, and that order is available for display everywhere you look if you'll just look at natural things themselves, which most of history involved mankind doing that in order to survive, because nature's rough. It's hard to survive in nature. And so as a result, like people who learned how, we called those guys wise. And we listen to them and we do what they say. Yeah. Now, all of that changed with trust no one over 30. Okay. And all of that, I think, again, is a class warfare, philosophical psyop. Call it Marxism. Call it Hegelian dialectic. Call it Platonic Aristotelian nonsense still at work as demagogic democracy. I don't care what you call it. The fight that's going on for the minds of mankind today over the simplicity of reality existing. Man is a man. Woman is a woman. that reality, that's questioned, that we allow children to say they are dogs and cats and that we do what they say, that madness. If you look back into any ancient pagan civilization, people were looking at nature in order to survive. They were saying things that worked. They wrote it down. And now if you look at it, you should be able to figure out why. And if you can figure out why they wrote something down that at first glance doesn't make any sense to you, well, guess what you just got? It's called smarter. You want to be smarter? You should. You should want to be smarter. Everybody should want to be smarter. You should not want to be stupider, right? You know what makes you stupider? Watching movies makes you stupider. Hey, to defend, this is 118. These are my translations, by the way. To defend, redirect, disinform, and lead away. To offend, combine knowledge, discipline, and aggression. Your enemy's hatred of you will make him hasty. He will lash out at your shadow. This is to your advantage. But it is possible to cast too broad a shadow. There's just, again, something glorious in the ancient mind. And discovering that will help you set yourself free from the tyranny of the present chaos that claims to be order. It claims to be reason. Look how plausible all the things we say are. But at the end of the day, you really don't know more than what's beyond the end of your nose or the end of your yard. And you're relying on witnesses. You're relying on the testimony of others. And one of the worst things about the 2020 wake-up call is that we realize that the testimony of others in America ain't worth, 2 cents. And the 2 cents you got ain't worth 2 cents in copper. That's for sure. They've been milking this dead cow for so long and lying to you about it. Well, what else to do, right? But ask Jesus for help. And when you do that, when you believe that the world that you are in now, whatever kind of darkness you see, whatever kind of wickedness is overwhelming, that you've been put here as a son of God, redeemed in Jesus Christ to stand, well, that changes everything. And again, now to claim and reclaim the orders of creation, the orders of nature, which the foolish Philistines have no desire to be under anymore. The Philistines of old understood this stuff way better than the new ones do. Okay, the new ones are stupid again. Barbarians are stupid, right? Don't be a barbarian unless you can be a civilized one. So the order that we can recover right now as Christians by simple understanding, 2 + 2 = 4 × 3 is 12, and most people can't do that. Our school systems, Lutherans, ought to be producing some of the greatest leaders of the world. Why we're not, I don't know. Actually, I do. And I know why we're closing them too. And anyway, that's a different topic. But it's about the same issue. Because all the issues are about principles. All your issues are about finding pressure points in reality that last and work not only in your life, but in other people's lives too. Like, who cares if you praying to the moon cat, helped your acne? It can't be proven and it won't help anybody else's. But a principle endures, well, really forever. Dean here asked a question. I can't throw it up on the screen. Can you explain why movies make us stupider? You say it often, but I don't know I've ever heard the reasoning. Yeah, I think I can. And be glad to do so as well. Thank you for the question. Why is it's not just movies, okay? I use movies or TV or your phone usage, the talking image, scrolling. They're all edges of a similar medium, a similar means of information moving. Communication, you can call it that, okay? They're a means of communication. And they're all very similar because they involve a mixture of visual mediums, right? Something you see, audio medium, something you hear, right? And then it's done not in front of you, say the way watching a concert might be, right? But now it's coming through this filter, this screen, which makes a light not unlike the light of the sun, which is dopamine effective, addicting, among other things. So there's all these complex facets as soon as you open the hood of what you're watching when you watch a screen, which I still do use them. I'm not going to stop, but nor do I sit down and let it have my head for 3 hours. I'm just not going to do that, right? So when you sit down and you decide to, let's say, suspend belief in reality, which you'd have to do for all 2 to 3 hours of the movie. You have to suspend belief in reality and ignore that you're a body. You just forget that you're a body for like 2 hours. And instead, maybe if you're eating, your body kind of remembers that part, right? But like for the most part, you disembody and live in a visual dreamcast. Well, it's a dream. You live in somebody else's dream. You walk in their shoes. You feel their feelings especially, or that you feel the feelings that they're going to make you feel. When it's done, you believe some things about what you know. You maybe think you've learned something in some way. But what you've mostly done is drooled, internally. You've just kind of drooled in the back of your brain and been fed a dopamine high of shuddery images, more and more, faster, because go watch the old movies. Most people won't. And that amplification of your adrenal glands ultimately is short wiring your capacity to be calm in any form, in any state, especially say in a group of people who would talk, but you're used to watching them on TV, and so you can only kind of stare at the group rather than engage, and that's really nerve-wracking to you, so you'd rather go home and watch some more TV rather than talk to the girls directly, that kind of thing, right? And so that heightened fight-flight simulation that's the result of just never really actually relaxing, but always being in these states of dream wherein, again, you're living through like radically wild lives with sin everywhere, that you're just kind of going to suspend your belief in the ramifications of any of this in your soul for the 3 hours or so, and then go on like nothing ever happened. Probably never going to journal about it. Probably won't pray about it. Won't take any of the real issues to Jesus. You'll watch it again, even if there were problems in it. That's the definition of stupider. I don't know how you get any more. Like, I could go on. I got stacks of paper. I don't have it with me here. I got stacks of paper written about this. I mean, it's an alien invasion of your soul. And, here, hi, by the way, you can see my face today. Why? Because I know people passing by will be more likely to hear me tell them, get off the internet. While I'm got my face here, than they will if I don't. Yeah. Why is that? With the power of the talking image. The power of the talking image. So he says, thank you for clarifying. Would reading fiction have a similar effect minus the screen-inducing dopamine? Yes. Yes. So fiction, I'm going to talk about fiction tonight already. So thank you for bringing it up. Fiction is an apocalypse. Fiction is a dream. Fiction is somebody revealing their witness. It's their witness, their confession, their testimony. And they're saying, I saw this. And because they want to say something of metaphorical impact, but they don't have a true history to tell, they tell it in metaphor. And this is okay. Jesus did this. A sower went out to sow seed, right? It's not a problem to tell a parable. Understand, though, that a very complex parable written by somebody who has no belief in God and thinks great wicked things about, say, I don't know, a coming of age story of a young boy who happens to be a wizard. And then you read that and then imbibe it and read it again and start to believe like this is normal life. Not the wizard, of course. I won't really do magic, but the relationships. What it means to be a man? I mean, one of the great questions I have, I really have this question. It's not a question now. It's a statement. Here's the thing. I read many fiction books growing up. Loved them. Wizard of Earthsea. Right? I'm losing now. Riddle Master of Head. Right? This is before Harry Potter even existed, right? And there's at least one more I could add to that list. What is it? Dragon's Blood, right? Great book. But like these are coming of age stories about boys becoming men, and they're all dealing with, again, this kind of fatherless individual, and they're all written by women. And the question I have is not women, how dare you? Thank you, God, for women, okay? I'm not a chauvinist at all. I am thankful for women, and I want to defend you against the hordes of wicked men who want to make you their slaves, and the other hordes that want to make you into their other stuff. And so, but what I don't think is possible is for a middle-aged woman to understand what it means to become a man. Any more than I don't think I can understand what it means to be a woman. Although I do think that men, by virtue of our headship, have a greater insight into this matter by virtue of us being the head and women being the body. But the point here again is that, like, for fiction now, okay? So I'm going to pick up a book of fiction by anybody. Forget man, woman, but it's part of it. Like, who wrote it? Who are they? What do they think? And what are they going to tell you? Is this a woman telling you about what a man should think? How interesting. Why are you reading that? Is this a woman telling you about what a woman should think? Well, that would be interesting. What'd she say, right? Is it a man writing about how witchcraft is really a better cosmology? Well, it might be really interesting with great, character development and maybe some neat gimmicks, but at what cost to tomorrow's reality? This isn't about how God's going to be like, how dare you, smite you with some zits or something like that, right? Like, this is about how when you walk away from the story, which frames inside of your soul that you use to filter reality moved. And certainly reading a fiction book probably is not going to move you as much as watching, binge watching a series of Netflix, because it's going to take more work to read the book. Your mind must engage it, as opposed to just being kind of drip fed what you're getting. Scrolling, similar but different, okay? But that said, people escape reality into fiction all the time, and it does not benefit their soul. Your soul is benefited by being who God the Father made you to be, and he didn't make you to live inside of a box. He didn't make you to pretend to be an image. He made you to be a father, mother, husband, wife, sister, brother, son, daughter, neighbor, uncle, friend. He made you to be human. And it's great that we have these tools for communication by which we can share knowledge, like good Gnostics, spread the knowledge of the answers of the world and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, to not notice what they are doing to us and to not see how they have amplified illiteracy, period. I mean, okay, do we lay the illiteracy rate of America at the feet of television or at the feet of Jimmy Carter's Department of Education? I mean, you pick. Not so sure they're far apart from each other, really, at the end of the deal. Before we go forward, though, that was a good question, and I thank you for it. I am now going to talk about the nature of planning. So if you think of your mind, your day, your heart as you engage the life and the spirit that God gives you, you operate with what I just called a framework, right? You have a series of assumptions. You believe certain things. You rely on them to be true. 2020 was difficult because we're like, wait, I thought that was true. Oh no, that's false. Wait, that too? How many things? There's so much false, right? So one way or the other, all of us had to deal with that one way or the other. Yeah. Now, having seen that, where is your framework? Do you understand it? Have you come to terms with reality? Who do you trust and why? And as we scream at each other about Kamala and the Orange Man, right? Where indeed is reality? Is it in the screen? Is it in the stories that we hear? Is it in all the toy and play by which those who make the money flow, the spice which runs, right? By which they keep us linked up to the batteries, tied into the subscription fees. And many people already certainly turned off the season of politics and right into football. Here we go, right? And so for a lot of people, it's just over already. Even though the ramifications are not over, even though the state of the streets in the United States of America is something that Christians simply ought not ignore. Because again, the nature of planning, the framework, how do you perceive what you are to be and do, right? And if you do not have a way of seeing that the evils that are happening on the streets of America are evil, that they cannot be shrugged at. It's not okay to let the poor just kind of die and be like, well, I guess they're poor. Yeah, too tough for them. That is called heartlessness. That is called impurity. These are the things that God actually gets mad about, right? He doesn't get mad about whether or not you chew tobacco. I mean, it's not good for your teeth. Nature will teach you. Okay? But God isn't worried about it. God's more concerned about what comes out of your mouth than what goes into your mouth. God is more concerned about his spirit who comes out of your mouth via words of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, the sowing of the seed, which is the actual words of Jesus, like the good word of Jesus of Nazareth, the actual man who is the King and God, who said things that everybody has to love, that even people who hate him kind of love him and say, well, he's kind of a good moral teacher because you know what? He taught us to not be the wretched, barbaric, ruthless, bloodthirsty people that were before his religion changed the world. Right? So building your framework on the good words, the good codes of Jesus Christ, that's what Sons of Solomon is about. That's what praying the Psalms, reading the Proverbs is about. But then as you try to navigate, the whirlwind, with the words of God, the framework of your faith is the foundation of your day. God's behind you, not against you. Your enemies will fall before you on judgment day, and so you may indeed love them now, right? As that all happens, it will be impossible for you not to make some plans. You're going to make some plans because plans help you perform what you expect to perform. But the problem with plans is they don't help you achieve what you want to achieve, right? So you can write them down and you can look at them and they can remind you to do them. But looking at them doesn't necessarily give you the power to do them. And, in a work environment, where there's a team, there's a sporting event, a highly controlled environment, plans are effective. But success, even under such controls, generally are misleading or limited to those who are most able to handle the unexpected. The universe, and therefore all information work, which really is all work, exists in an uncontrolled or finally a chaotic environment. This is under the mind of God. God's mind is not chaos, right? But God's mind holds what looks like chaos to us under its, peace and harmony. And we then are riding the waves of this timeline sphere life thing, right? Which feels a lot more like being in a fog than it does like being in order. And the fog of pile, that's what happens. The more you attempt to control tomorrow, the more you build up information to make tomorrow more productive than today. The more you leave these clever trails to retrace later, the more you find piles of these trails, a chaos of your own accumulated notes and tasks, and exactly what is on my desk most days. Yeah. So how do you overcome that fog of pile? How do you see that the battlefield is supposed to be a battlefield? You beat the fog of pile by giving it a place in the chaos, and you call that place the place where you fight. And then you let the kasushi, the inequivalency, the distortion, the little jiggle, you let the asymmetry that's symmetrical propel you forward. That is, a little chaos in a box isn't a bad thing as long as you know what the chaos is made of, right? If it is your junk drawer, you know what's in your junk drawer if you know what's in your junk drawer. Yeah, efforts to bind ideas or information to fixed places forever only stultifies the system. The fact is, your framework, your mind, your soul is more of a flow than a point. And information itself flows in and out deeply within the breath that you take. So striving to ensure that you never forget anything, that you never lose anything, all that's going to do is overwhelm you with too many things to ever really find what you're looking for again. Overpreservation is an overlove of this life, and it creates clutter, which is a curse. Hiding the valuable beneath the overwhelming mass of potential that is not anything yet. And so if you would be guided by form and reformation as you continue to walk as a man, ladies too, you're welcome, in this dark and dreary age, well, then don't try so hard to plan the form your assumptions will take, but instead accept that you will change your assumptions to fit the form of truth as you seek that truth and as God reveals it to you more and more, of course, from his word. This balance, this harmony, this foundation is the organic renewing of your mind, the transformation of your unbelieving soul into a believing one, according to the word of God, and more. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And we're just getting started. Because StarFall 2029, while they're all losing their minds, let's play a game. Your weapon is your mind. Your fuel is the word. Your mind feeds your heart, and your heart grants you will. Less what you are afraid of, more what are you waiting for. Believing so is more important than thinking so when it comes to knowing so. And that's a matter of understanding as principle. Are you a man? Stand in his story, for all fiction professes apocalypse. Again, war, comets, poetry, and story. Tonight, what I am thinking about is the brewing conflicts between the National Atlantic Trade Organization connected former United Kingdom powers and the former axis of evil, sort of, but communist regimes, sort of, everybody else, the BRICS network, those who don't want to play the dollar game anymore, and now they're firing missiles, even though we got peace voted for on our side. And doesn't it just make you feel horrible? But remember that it's really all probably just to get you to give up your rights by 2030 and sign on to the UN agenda to let them take care of things, which is why keeping an eye on that rock that's hurtling its way toward us, that little Apu face. You know it well, right, by now. Ho, 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 Apu face. This meteor is going to come between us and the moon, and all of our work with rocket ships and Mars launches and the rest of it. Like I said before, I'm not exactly like singing the praises of the guys that I'm singing the praises of, because for every guy I say, hey, I like what he's doing, I can totally see how, because he's a Satanist in his closet, he could be working for our destruction at the end of the day. And why would you trust anybody who's paid to say what they say on TV? I mean, really, why would you? Why would you trust anybody you can't hold accountable? Why would you listen to somebody? Why would you give them their time if you can't hold them accountable? I mean, unless they're really spitting truth, serious truth. But man, that better be obvious. That better be obvious. Nothing sounds crazy like an actual planned coming, initially life ending, but probably nothing astronomical event. And that's why we're going to keep our eye on it. This is all brought to you by Darkshore, not-for-profit Christian enterprises and catalyzations. Help us build your ark. Darkshore exists to promote the praying of the Proverbs and the Psalms and the red letters of Jesus Christ amongst young men, young women, and the entire Christian church on earth. sonsofsolomon.net is where you can find the simple prayer discipline to revolutionize your life. More on that later. In the meantime, since we're going to roll character for righteousness in StarFall, never forget, you get to decide: dash, duck, grapple, pray, ready, hide, search, stabilize, aid, use, make, break, raise up, cast out, and more. StarFall 2029, get the gist. We're a live action role-playing, storytelling, gamification of discipleship by biblical literacy. Who is a gur, and what is his prayer? Tell me if you know. Mixed messages, they are the essence of social media, dysfunctional relationships, and mind-controlled tactics. So I'm out here to counterseed a better narrative, build on principles, knowing that that's all it takes, and there are always three. So which are yours? The synagogue, the prophet, and the beast? The machines, the white tower, the sleepwalkers? The barbarian, the Gnostic, the godless? The wicked, the scoffer, the fool? The Philistines, the Edomites, the Amaleki? You tell me. I'll tell you that no matter how you feel about the election, it's a state religion. I voted. Did you vote? I voted. I voted pro-life. I was happy with my vote. I wasn't happy with my state. I was happy with my vote. I wasn't happy with the vote of the female demographic across the country. That didn't surprise me. It bothered me. I was happy with the vote of the male demographic across country, of the mostly, rural demographics across the country. Why? Like I said already, I think that cutting body parts off babies is children, that kind of thing, killing babies, it's all bad. It's all bad. And so I'm really for any government that does less of that and not more of that. I also am tired of poison being sprayed places that seems to be sprayed. I hope it stops. I'm tired of poison being put in foods as if they're foods. I hope it stops, right? The plight of the poor. Does anybody care about the poor? All this Romans 13, pastors don't talk politics. It's like, okay, but what about the poor? Can I talk about the poor? And again, so I voted, and I'm pretty happy with the vote, but I'm saying all this here to say that doesn't mean I'm not watching anymore. I'm like, oh, well, it's all fixed now. And easy there, Tiger. Easy. Anyone who thinks that Trump said so, therefore. No, that's not how anything works ever. The man is no God. Jesus will do what he will do. And what we want to see, if we're actually Christians at this moment, is that the state religion at the moment listens to Christians. And it wasn't before that vote. So for 4 years, conservative Christianity has a chance to talk to the beast. not so much as like it's going to eat you, but more like the one running the control of the, the great mega Goliath, might actually listen, might hear Daniel say, that would be unwise. And then say, well, we'll throw you in the lion's den. And then he survives. And then he believes, whatever, however God wants to work it. And whether it's, Trump is just such a lightning rod. Like the fact that I talk about him means people assume I'm like in bed with him or something. It's gross, the things that people say. I mean it. Like that actually wasn't said about me. It was said about him by someone. Anyway, on and on. It's horrible. Like people are so obsessed with the man that he's practically Satan to them, or he's practically God to them. And this is because for both sides, it's a state religion. That's what you got to figure out. It's a national cult. Both sides. It's the beast of empire, which the book of Revelation told us about, which the seat of the man of lawlessness in the Roman Catholic Church will always be striving to lead, like the great harlot riding on its back, okay? Like this is nothing new. And what's new-ish is that it's a talking image that's already running every house near you. That's a little new. It's a state religion. It didn't matter who won. You can have better and worse religion, however. And so since it's going to make all the decisions that affect the food on your table, the air that you breathe, and what happens to your children, like whether they get sent off to die in a war, the piety, which is like, well, my kids can go die, I don't care. Well, great, good for you. But like, you don't get to rule me. We live in the United States. It's a free country. I have freedom of speech. And I think my children, my daughters particularly, shouldn't have to die at the front lines, certainly not under the orders of some men dressed up like women. I don't think that's good. And I think that voting against it's okay. I think Christians should be like for that. And again, I'm wrestling with here a little bit, because where else do we talk about these things? The lack of intra-synodical dialogue that my church body has, on these things, where we're afraid of the ramifications of being who we are. We want to be Bible believing, but every time someone says that's mean, we like change and become limp-wristed and again placating. And this is not the time for that. I'll say that for sure. When you have a state religion as powerful as this one, it's not the time to placate either side. What we do have to recognize, if you're a leader, if you're a thinker, just see that most people still haven't recognized the dynamic, refractive societal trauma they went through in 2020. Like, have you taken time yourself to just think it through? I mean, I know you have to have, right? But like, what just happened? Did we just go back? No, not a chance. So what did happen? Trauma. Trauma happened. There's a scar in your hindsight now. You can't see back through part of your life the way you did the rest of it before that. No matter what age you are. If you were 3, it's harder to see this. But if anybody who's over 20 when 2020 happened, that 4-year blip they just created, whatever, it's like a scar in your memory banks now. Right? You're going to look back and it's always going to feel that way. That happened, a traumatic psychosocial attack on you by a government, a order, cannot be underestimated. If you underestimate it, then you're not dealing with it. The only way you're going to deal with how much it hurt you to realize what happened is to deal with it. And of course, those who won't admit what happened, I mean, again, they just can't face the pain. But we now then face, in a world where men won't face pain, that's a unavoidably cowardly kind of place. We, the Church of Jesus Christ, are not here to be cowards. We're not here to presume peace for ourselves. We're not here to assume our existence as a tradition that just can kind of float by. If we ignore the fact that everything about our civilization is falling apart and don't at least pray to Jesus that he'll do something about it, well, then it's going to fall apart. And if you just say, I don't care, I live under grace, I say, why do you sin that grace may abound? Condemnation is well deserved for such folly. And it is folly. The West, our country, is a casino. It's a land grab casino, a failing one. built behind the curtain of trembling morbid obesity and lifted up on the bones of strip malls, escape addiction, and victimhood mindedness. We are long subject to economic, political, and psychosocial warfare, so-called fifth generation, and the ominous centralization and calcification of avenging powers by those proven dishonest with them is nothing for us to shrug at. False laws are not laws. Obeying the boastful voice of evil's demands is neither just nor merciful. The failure to believe that professionally financed propaganda campaigns harnessing addictive technologies to collar and deceive the public will de facto result in drastic consequences to faith, morals, and the spirit of the Holy Church appears a perilous abandonment of Christianity's prophetic character. Planned Parenthood is planned obsolescence. If and when it all goes sideways, people are going to die. And that the rich are running the world in such a way to take advantage of the poor is not a surprise. This is what the Bible teaches. The rich know. They know. They use it to their advantage. What did they use to their advantage? Pharma, sugar, interest rates, television programming. All these things you could just say, pollution. Global wars are masks of monetary illiquidity. And virtually all autoimmune diseases that began appearing in the 1980s can be traced to adjuvant complications. Meanwhile, the United States government is preparing for something that they're definitely not telling us about. Bioweapons, underground warfare. The issue of proxy bioweapon development in Ukraine and abroad is now front and center as Tulsi Gabbard faces scrutiny in her recommendation by President Trump for the Director of National Intelligence, with some claiming for her to be a foreign agent serving the interests of Vladimir Putin, as if the dossier that, all that crap from 4 years ago were still in play. And I don't know. Maybe it is, although something tells me Tulsi's a Hawaiian. And if I know anything about Hawaiians, it's kind of like Hawaii for Hawaiians, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't really have a problem with that, actually. It's a beautiful place. And so what I do know, though, again, is that like the current zeitgeist, the current moment, is one in which people's motives are going to be revealed by what happens next. And so what we Christians want to do is act with pure motives. Right? It isn't as though a pure motive makes the act good. Okay, Christians can still make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time. We do the wrong thing all the time. But to the merciful, he is merciful. To the pure, he is pure. It's not as though good motives make an evil action good, but good motives do cause mistakes to just not mean nearly as much. And I'm saying right now, like you can just smell it in the wind a little bit, right? Now is the time for boldness. Of course, Paul says this. Peter says this. I mean, it's in the New Testament. Every day is a day to watch. What I say to you, I say to all. Watch, right? But there are times when the wise see the evil coming and hide themselves. Huh? And there are times where the righteous are bold as a lion. And I'm suggesting that right now is such a time. Right now is such a time to get your framework together, to start understanding how you think, to take control of your own mind, to know your reality. There's only one universe. There's only one cosmos. There's only one reality, okay? Like, don't get me wrong here with what I'm going to say next, okay? Do not paint me in a box. Hear me, okay? There's only one. God made it. It's outside God. It's separate from God. Creation is not God. God is not creation. But we are his handiwork. There's only one reality. Every single human being alive experiences that reality differently. I mean, that's what the word soul means. Different. Right? So each of us is a different soul. Not is a different soul. And so each of us has a distinct, wholly even, separate, unique relationship with God and therefore all creation. So the reality that God made that we all inhabit, which is one, and in which, in a sense, we are one. And all the pagans are like, oh, the universe is one. Well, yeah, in a sense, yeah. I mean, like there is no place where there is nothing. Even space is just a fancy word for something we don't understand, really. But that reality that we all experience is experienced distinctively in our hearts and minds and souls as unique, energies, spirits, beings, creatures, men. How do you define the reality that you see? And when you define the reality that you see, does it relate to? Is it the same as what others say? Or do you find yourself in conflict with what they say? This has everything to do with, is it good to spray aluminum in the sky for the sake of carbon? Or is it bad? Right? It has everything to do with, when I get up tomorrow morning, what are the words I tell myself about hope and optimism and success? What may I expect from my world? What may I expect from my God? Reality. Finding the reality that is true and not the one that is your dream is the secret sauce of not having failed expectations, right? Failed expectations is when you want something that's not real and it doesn't happen and you're upset. So having realistic expectations is a key to calm and to peace. So defining your reality is sort of a first step. Second, then, understanding your reality is vexed by Babel. You live in Babylon. So while it's real for you and it makes sense when you explain it, everybody else hears that a little differently and has trouble understanding what you're saying. And so, with our languages, if we have the same language, we can usually talk it through and figure it out, but not always. Sometimes, really not always, right? Because the curse of Babel is a major portion of our reality. The fact of the kingdom of Jesus Christ overcoming the curse of Babel, stopping it in its tracks with the word of the Bible as the word of God, as a dictionary, a lingua franca, a spirit of a people to inspire all people that ever pick it up to read it, because that's the promise of baptism into Jesus Christ. That kingdom, this is the antidote to the Babel curse, right? So Babel brings confusion. The kingdom brings words of peace and harmony. And reality is this, one way or the other. Which side are you on? Right? From there, life in the kingdom is given to be a life of hope, a life of trust, and a life of mercy, right? You know God is for you. The future will get better. You know God is for you. He's with you now. You know God is for you. He has shown mercy in the past. That's what Jesus is all about. And you know these things because of the prophetic reality of the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, who is one with the Father and the Son, who has continued to preach the truth of God's existence as inspiration into men's hearts all through history, but now especially poured out in these latter days upon the New Testament church, according to the great washing of regeneration, the baptismal flood that came from the side of Jesus as he was pierced with that spear, right? Water and blood flowing out. This prophetic truth that you are loved by God, and that's why Jesus died. This is what would inspire you to hope in his trust and mercy for you, that the kingdom overcomes Babylon, that this is the new reality, and that the glory of your life in this, raised from the dead now by the Spirit, raised from the dead forever on the last day, that glory is love. That glory is to be pure, merciful, charitable to others that you see. Yeah. To protect the helpless and the weak, to stand up. It doesn't mean don't be a man. It doesn't mean don't get in a fight. It means if you're going to fight for the right, not for the bad. Yeah. More I could say there, but would you believe that's the Augsburg Confession's initial layout for how it structures categories of thought? Sure is. Hey, but while we're dealing with being prepared, knowing that the times that we live in are extraordinary, let me suggest that the most important thing you can do today to prepare for what's coming tomorrow is to take ownership of what's in your hands. Forget what you can buy from far away to store in the basement just in case the bombs go off. What's in your hands today? Have you cleaned your closet? Have you changed the oil in your car? How are those leaves doing outside? Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to harp on you. I'm trying to say that a lot of our problems are far away and a lot of our problems are right near us. Let's fix the ones that are right near us and then keep fixing them until there aren't too many problems nearby at all. What's in my hands? What do I control? What can I influence? And then know what makes God destroy nations, cities, kingdoms, houses, churches. Idolatry, innocent bloodshed, prostituting of the daughters, and twisting all good things. That's what makes God destroy stuff. What words are made to endure? The words of Jesus: scatter the seed, leave the tares, trust the leaven, right? Buy that field. What words are made to endure? Jesus' words, the red letters, follow Jesus. And then how to name the beast. How to see where the sword is. How to avoid biting back. How to love the spirit of the matter, if you know what I'm saying. The Old Testament principles of fire and judgment upon nations are the natural law, and Moses' refraction of them are sure and true. It's not as though the old covenant of circumcision applies to all of us and it's narrow. That's not the point. The point is that righteousness, it endures. Uprightness, it stands. Wickedness, it collapses. Folly, it will fall. That's the point right there, right? And so from there, we do not expect for any moment to live so righteous as to bring about paradise on earth, but we certainly can live so righteous as to not murder our children. And that's sort of what Christianity is about. It's like, oh, look, I've turned the hearts of the fathers to the sons and the hearts of the sons of the fathers. These generations will wait patiently for the life of the world to come and not try to profiteer on the backs of their neighbors and the backs of their children. That's exactly what we've jettisoned now, isn't it? Yeah. According to Gerberding in his The Lutheran Pastor, all pastors are to be men. Fighting words these days, huh? All pastors are to be men, and that means they are not to be any kind of men, he says. They are to be manly men. And then he tells us, well, what does that mean? And I found it pretty fascinating. It's Gerberding, the Lutheran Pastor. It's a great little book, Pastoral Theology. Essential elements of manliness. There are 6 of them. First one's intellectual capacity. Second is piety. Third is moral courage. Fourth is sympathy of spirit. Fifth is an industrious nature. And sixth is being commonsensical. Now, I suppose, because I know the spirit of the times, it'd be very easy for someone to say, women are those things too. And, at that point, we're just not on the same planet anymore, I guess. I mean, it's not that women aren't those things. Women have intellectual capacity, piety, moral courage, sympathy of spirit. You can find a woman with all these things. It's not the point. The point is that we expect these things particularly of men. Over an abundance. Like they are to, if you are to be a man that's going to stand among men and lead men, you better have intellectual capacity. Better not be a fool. And piety, godliness. Again, I said it before. This election was about godliness. That's what the vote was for. There was a vote against godlessness, and it was against 2 types: uneven scales and unicism. So moral courage voted. Moral courage voted. Well, there was cackling and screaming about having the moral courage to vote to castrate your children. Right? Moral courage, though, men. Like, would you be men now? The time is now. Stand up. Moral courage. Know that because your morality is true, 10 Commandments, Creed, Lord's Prayer, that there is nothing to stand against you. And on that courage, be. And for this, the love is cheap, the love is free. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Sympathy of spirit. To know enough to know that you're okay. So you can see someone else who's not okay. Even if they're misdirecting it at you. And stay okay. And maybe even help them be more okay. Not to carry their burden, but to stand beside them with it, And how are you going to do that without an industrious nature? Because after you spent several hours doing that with someone randomly one day, you got to get back, put those bulletins together, right? It's not always the case. Depends on where you're called and if you are a pastor. But again, manliness, sympathy of spirit to see the other and meet their need with strength that is gentle, and industrious nature to be a self-starter. What's a boy? He does not have industrious nature. What's a boy? He's not sympathetic. What's a boy? He wants moral courage. Finally, commonsensical. Men who dream and are just dreamers, well, they're not much men when it comes to history. That's for sure. Their names will not be remembered. All right. I mentioned before, like, I don't trust it all. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about the entire election, right? I'm all for, like, this is exciting. Doge, what a hilarious thing. I just cannot laugh enough about Doge the dog being the new Department of Government Efficiency. I just can't believe it. It's hilarious. It's great TV. But like, I don't want great TV. I want righteousness to flow like an unending stream, and I want justice in the court of law. And what I see, I mean, Elon Musk is brilliant. He's doing so many brilliant things. Every move is like he's playing master chess, and he's just winning again and again. And maybe he'll fall one moment, maybe he won't. But what I see happening, all this winning, is still technocracy. The technocratic revolution has not stalled in the least. And so the next time someone yells at me somewhere about how I'm too much for it, I'm going to point them here and say, get off my back. Okay. I'm watching. We just signed up for a central bank digital currency that'll come through X sometime in the next 4 years, probably. Somehow they're going to work it in. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't want it. I don't want it at all. But at the same time, I've also decided at a certain point as Christians, like, what battle are we here to fight? Are we here to fight about how they craft their idols? Because that's what currency is a form of idol that we accept in order to buy and change, right? The mark of the beast, greed. It's not something that's coming later as a barcode. It's always here. It's in your hand. What do you do with your money, right? Is your money so important that it rules your mind? Or is it something that your heart no longer is attached to and you're able to give away? And so, whatever, if my money is this influence that I have via their crypto coin or whatever, because they manage it and then I can't buy beef and my children go hungry and we're all sick, then that's the world God made for us. Don't get me wrong. If I can vote against it, if I can convince people to not go that way, I will. But I think that we are unavoidably hitched to that train. We were on that train with a Harris-Biden reaffirmation ticket because the global powers of Agenda 2030 definitely wanted that to come our way. But when it comes to the other side, the right, to the Trump bandwagon, it's no different. I mean, Doge is a truth department. We just started a department of truth. I mean, welcome to 1984. It's 1984, right? We have peace on all sides, but we don't. We have someone who's saying, look, we're going to make peace, and then we have a bunch of others that are going to take actions that they already are breaking what peace, could be. The idea that federal agencies will be closing down and starting up again, that federal agents will be fired or quitting or all these other things, we're in for quite a ride in the cities. Washington, D.C. is going to go through a pretty tough time. It's not as though they aren't already filled with like homeless people and poor people and all this. And those people who work largely in service industries that serve the elites who then are the ones, taking advantage of D.C. and running the country through the swamp. Who knows what happens to them? Because if Trump's goal to move federal agencies to the Midwest, which I think is brilliant, politically, should he do this? What happens to that corridor that has completely been built up around the scam that is the swamp? But it's there, it's there. All those cities, all those people. What happens? Abortion being thrown back to the states. Lots of things being thrown back to the states. This is probably good. We should rejoice in this if we care for the freedom of our brothers as mankind, that local people can get local answers to local problems, but it's not as though our states are local, right? I mean, they kind of are, but they kind of aren't. They're more like little baronies suddenly. Just kind of suddenly, little baronies. And that wasn't what they were supposed to be either. They were supposed to be like a Congress and a legislature, only smaller, But as Hobbes, I think, pointed out in Leviathan, it's there elsewhere, the government does just grow and grow and grow until you cut off its head, and then it will grow back again. This is the Hydra comic book flavor. And I'm not advocating shooting anybody. I'm saying Christians should be aware that the many-headed beast is going to come and go. And when abortion is being sent back to the states, which you have is sort of like the imperial beast is in a weakened state. It's got a little mini mortal wound, right? Sound familiar? But then the the smaller versions of those beasts, they're all doing fine, and they're going to reunite again here soon enough, if not already. I mean, Texas is making big plays to be a leader of sorts with some of the things it's doing, donating land for certain things that the Trump administration is going to do, on and on and on. How can you complain about regenerative farming? I think you got to keep your eye on this, along with the Kennedy appointment that is saying, why don't we test these adjuvants and see if they're really helping our children? Along with that, you have a push toward agriculture. At least the question now: are we doing our land well? Are we doing our people well by the food with the land? Do we have to destroy the soil, or is there a way to farm that's in harmony with both our bodies and the soil? And there's more than one answer to that, and why would I expect big government to get the answer? But I do think they're capable of maybe less of the wrong answer at the present, right? And don't mess that SpaceX is continuing to really push. I don't know how Elon does it all, except I do. He's got a great team around him. He must surround himself with people he trusts. But they continue to fire rockets and work on the new Dragon, which is their Starship. I mean, they're all about pushing forward. I keep wondering, is God going to smite him for trying to break the astral plane, or is in fact God inviting us to starfaring? And keep an eye also on this and pray for this. The World's Fair, what a great idea! I mean, they seeded it with Marvel, but what a great idea to bring science, industry, hope, and talent back to the United States as a great celebration. And I would hope that you Christians out there are already thinking about what you could do to present at the World's Fair, how you can be part of it. I'm praying personally that it would show up in Rockford, Illinois. I mean, no better way to end around Pritzker's big statements about keeping Trump out of Illinois than to put the World's Fair in Rockford. And how can you say no to all that money? No one, not even Pritzker, could say no to all that money. Things to keep an eye on. Things to keep an eye on that we're going to keep watching along with the Apophis. Remember, all of this is about tracking with the fact that the lies are there to scare you into giving up your rights. The lies are there to scare you into buying stuff. The lies are there to scare you into not being the master of your own fate under the kingship of Jesus Christ. And 2030 is one of those lies. It's one of those lies. Before we get to that one, we got some other fun ones on the calendar, right? So we're all about the comet's going to come, 4/13/29. But before that, we got two major events coming up during the Trump administration, right after the 4th of July celebration that ends the Doge government efficiency organization. That's July 4th, 2026. Right in that time frame, 2026, 2027, the taxes on the national debt ratio invert. That is to say, the debt that we owe on the debt that we owe will be so deep that we'll have to go under again. And at the same time, Social Security will go to zero and Medicaid will begin going unpaid. That's on the debt calendar, the statistics of the books for some time in the next 2.5 years, so far as just, if we keep doing things like we're doing, even if they keep passing budgets that are just spending more money, we're going to hit these other two markers that are like new event horizons. So, are those just stories? How strong is the dollar? What can tariffs do? What happens when the dollar collapses? The assumption that organized civility in your neighborhood, your town, your city cannot quickly collapse into desperate, a nihilistic conflict in a matter of days is one of the most ignorant and ahistorical assumptions you can make. Argentina, circa 2001 to 2, lost a large population, including many children, who starved to death over several months due to a depletion of their dollar, their money, due to pegging schemes, not unlike some modern economic theories applied here with the dollar. In suburbia, it was total anarchy for over 4 weeks. So for a month in Argentina, late 2001, 2002, there was anarchy in suburbia. Like literally, everyone was just fighting for food for 4 weeks. Plastic was frozen. Right? You couldn't use your cards. There was cash, and it did work, but you couldn't find it. ATMs were empty. Right? And then after that, people are in their homes. People are just trying to stay alive. Right? Order spread outward from where the elite had their reserves, right? So the cities, the government didn't really fail, even though it was completely bankrupted, because they just had the power. They just kept going. But the people, they suffered. And it's only in the last 2 years, again, that maybe, if you trust Malay, they're out of the woods on that one. But what it shows here, the thing to learn is that money affects religious worship of the state. Okay? So your need for your country to be strong is created by your desire for your money to work. Money affects the religious worship of the state. Even though money is not the state itself. The state is something more. The state is the order. The state is the sword. But the sword goes and takes the money it needs in order to continue being a sword, right? And then, therefore, that order that it brings by taking and distributing, right? That order that it brings causes those who are under that order to look to it as their salvation, as their order, rather than often the creator, right? And then that leads them to really worshiping the money within the system that they that leads them to worshiping the state by means of what they do with their money. So you can see their hunger for their pocketbook in how much they worry about the state of politics. Does that make sense? I think that's pretty clear. And this is, this already, right? Everything the animal man does is worship all the time. And worship is a matter of the stories you tell. So if the story you tell is about politics because it's about the banks, well, then that's what's going to be your worship. And if we let the wicked tell all the stories, of course they're going to be telling stories about money, right? They're going to reduce truth to a game of status. Everything you say will be about the prestige and cred you can get when you say it. Everything that's good is just an appeal to some other authority. There's no trust, really. The golden insight in this is that your language is your religion. Write that down. Think it through. Your language is your religion. The language of the Bible is the religion of Christianity, right? The language of Star Wars, I don't know, man. That's something else altogether. Money is the root of most people's language. So again, the religious fervor they put into everything else is at the root their desire to have food and power. Food and power. All right. I'm going to make a left turn here. And with the new format and with my voice being what it is and things on and on, I'm going to talk about as much as I can. I'm going to engage in the comments. I'm going to be back next week. And then the comments going to come and we're going to live through it. I think. I'm pretty sure. I want Jesus to come back long before that. But so, I have a pile of stuff here to talk about. I talked about talking about fiction. I want to do that still. I don't know if I will, though, because my voice is just wearing out again. The more I talk, the tireder it gets. I'm over the cold. It's just it's that little frog in the back. But before we turn the corner and move toward an end of tonight, I want to talk about how you fight against demons. I want you to imagine a few things with me. And the reason I want you to imagine these things is to heighten your awareness of how much of a war you're in and how great it is to fight, as opposed to just wander around, eating stuff while you wait. And so, you have to kind of if you're willing to suspend belief and watch the Flintstones for half an hour, suspend belief for me for a moment here. But I don't think we're really suspending anything. Some of this I think might just be true, but I don't know. I can't prove it. So I'm not teaching this as though it's dogma, right? But the idea here is that we make a lot of assumptions about demons. Lots. The Bible doesn't say much. We make lots. And what the Bible does say, I don't know how much we really pay attention to it. Again, we pick up stuff from like Greek mystery religion, and then we just assume that it's true. So I just want you to imagine for a moment that demons can't read. Now, you might just say, well, of course they can. Oh, fine. Okay. You probably have a good argument. I could come up with 3. But I'm just trying to make a point first, right? I want you to imagine that they can't. And it's easy enough. He's like, well, then how would the devil know the Bible? It's easy. He heard it a lot, many times, over lots and lots of history. He has it memorized. Can he understand it? That's a different thing. Because it looks like when he's tempting Jesus, he's more confused than anything. He doesn't seem to understand what these words mean. So, again, imagine that he's heard it, but that, again, they can't read. Now, what would that mean if that were true? It would mean that, here's kind of the idea. It would mean they can't read your heart. It's even more important, right? So if I write a note to my wife and there's a demon haunting us, it can't read the note. But if I say out loud to my wife, you horrible person, well, now that spirit sure knows what's going on in my heart, doesn't it? They can also hear you pray, which is where if a good thing happens and you say nothing, or a good thing happens and you say, praise Jesus, it does have a different effect on the spirits that were listening. Right? I'm trying to heighten your awareness. Imagine that the demons are stupid. Like, that they literally can't learn. Like, can you imagine? Like, no, they're that dumb. They actually can't learn. They're hyper intellectual. They have really creative thought processes, but they cannot learn. They can't read. And the only way they know your heart is if you tell them. So maybe pray out loud more often. Left turn again. The father is the public talker, and we need to recover this. Why do people love Trump? They see him as their father. He's a spiritual father to them, whether they like it or not. It's a state religion, like I already said. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm just calling it what it is. The father's a public talker. Right? What's pastor in the congregation? Public talker. What should the father be in the house? Public talker. Pastor. President. Presider. King. Submission to a shared image of power is the essence of community. To have a community is to be a fount, to be a head as one. And then, therefore, we must be under someone. The orders that be are the orders that are, and trying to fight them, that's the definition is stupid. There's always above you. There's always below you. In your place, it's given and good. And if Jesus says, come up here, he says, come up here. Hallelujah. Here's your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu moment for the evening. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we teach it here at Hebron Collegium, hebroncollegium.org, Gap Year Bible School for Men in Rockford, Illinois. And we do need your support, Darkshore, Illinois. Darkshore, not-for-profit, we are still looking for your end-of-year giving. Thank you, those of you that have committed already to next year. We're trying to raise a total of $40,000 to keep this Gap Year Bible School for Men here in Rockford going. It is a dream of mine and going most excellently. We will send you a packet about all that information, so give you a phone call, whatever you need to convince you to be on our side. Get us in your budget for the coming year. Reach out at madpxm.com/contact. And while you're there, sign up for Mad Christian Mondays. Hallelujah to those of you who have already helped out and supported. And if you are in the process of talking to your congregation about getting us in the budget, thank you so much for doing so. I think we are going to make it. But every time I pitch this, I always get a little nervous about it. It's the way that I am. So Brazilian moment, your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu moment in line with the Hebron Collegium and learning Psalms, Proverbs, and Jiu-Jitsu here in Rockford, Illinois. Here's your lesson for this week from Jiu-Jitsu. It is the inferior's job to tap. Tapping is what you do when you are hurting so much that you would like to quit. Usually when this is your first time, it's very, very early. You're like, okay, enough. And I remember these moments for other people because it's kind of like, oh, really? Are you sure? Like that? Okay. But for most people, after, the first 3 or 4, they're willing to kind of take a little bit more and try a little harder on the thing. And so, you go further, and at a certain point, though, you're being choked. You're like, oh, I'm kind of blacking out here. Or your arm's in a bad position. Like, I don't want to be here. And then, well, it's your job to tap. And tap means go like this. You just, tap, 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 tap. You just tap them. Tap, tap, tap. And then they stop. and then everything's safe. But here's the thing. You're tapping because you lost. You're tapping because you're not where you want to be. And a lot of people won't tap. They're like, oh, no, I won't tap. I don't lose. Oh, and then again, it's the inferior's job to tap or people get hurt. So you learn quickly, you're either going to get hurt, you're going to quit and start again. You're going to accept your position as inferior in order to get better, or in order to be who you are and not be hurt. And that means this is a huge lesson for everywhere else in life. Are you under a father or mother, boss, right? Are you supposed to do a duty somewhere? Right? It's the inferior's job to tap. How many conflicts in how many homes could be solved by submission? And fathers to children, fathers to mothers, and again, fathers in the workforce. Now, who is to hate you for doing good? That's how Paul says it. Proximity to the master is the weight of glory, and it will be worth it once you get it. Oh my goodness, that was just one little stack here. I have so many more things I kind of hoped to talk to you all about tonight. I wanted to talk about the supernatural reality of thinking. I want to talk about barriers to healing your soul. I'm talking about like trusting Jesus to get over the psychology that everyone else wants to put you on drugs for. And I'm talking about focusing on things that don't matter, stopping you from focusing on things that do. But I think all we're going to get to tonight is first draft, little fiction action. I was asked to be on a podcast called, I think is it Deep Root? Are you watching it? Recently, I'll have to try to share it again. It should be coming in the StarFall podcast channel. We're going to rebroadcast it. But we talked about fiction. And it was one of the first times that I've had the chance to do that. And it really got me thinking about, with all the stuff I've studied and all the work I do, and I'm really glad to do it here. And I'm very thankful for those of you who support us at subscribestar.com/RedFist, because without that, I don't know what we'd be doing. But one of the reasons I do this show is I just want to share. Like, I work really hard to discover stuff that I think is interesting. And I don't want it for me. Like, I want it to share. And in that regard, like the study of fiction, the study of poetry, the study of story, the study of physics, I've just been thinking a lot about how to contribute to the wider world without having to, be the great success how do you hold yourself to your standards? What goals do you set? When you have a series of 10 or 15 or now it's 35 things you've told yourself you're going to do, how do you go back and start removing things and not do it? And then when you do them, do you do it mediocre? Or are you like, oh, that's a C+, I'm done? Because that's not me. That's not me. I'm like, wow, A- or bust, baby, on everything. Oh, yeah, I'll write a calculus book this afternoon. Why not? I'll just start. And so, I get off on that stuff. I write things, I do things, I build things. I love it. And then I love interfacing it and sharing it. And I don't think there's anywhere to do that as effectively as in poetry and fiction. The bards of old, right? What do we need more than anything else right now? Do we need more books? No. We don't need more books. Do we need more TV shows? No. Do we need more podcasts? No. Do we need more church bodies? No. Do we need more congregations? Let's keep the ones we got and put somewhere we don't have any. What do we need more of? Storytellers. Bards, poets, witnesses, fathers. Those who are unafraid to say, I saw this, it means that. And know that all of it must be subsumed beneath the word of Jesus. And then when you're subsuming yourself beneath the word of Jesus, everything else is going to be taken captive to that or dressed away, pushed away. Oh, goodness. So, yeah, I got the whole first draft of the thing here, but we're back at that point too. Like, one of the goals is to start recording this show at 4 so that I'm not so tired by this point. And, now that is 7:45 here. We're in Rockford, which really isn't that bad, but it's about 8 o'clock every night that I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready for bed now. And it's worse right now with the sun going down. I tell you, I don't know about you, but when that sun drops below the horizon, ever since I went to Alaska last year and like synced with the sun and was up for like 14 hours straight, multiple days, like, oh, the sun is my, animal spirit god, right? Like I don't worship the sun, but my body could not ignore the power of that thing. And ever since then, like I come home and like sun goes down and I am done thinking. My brain, it ain't there anymore. And I think that's healthy, right? Like isn't that what the signs and seasons of the skylights is for? Although I like stargazing too. You can't do that if you fall asleep as soon as the sun goes down and all this. But so the goal is to like record a little bit earlier, which means some of you who watch live are going to have to watch, not live. And again, excuse me, kind of leaning toward, this is a podcast that's recorded on YouTube for the sake of ease until the day that YouTube decides that me saying stuff about Christianity and marriage is enough to get us banned. And at that point, I'll have to figure out how to do it elsewise. But the podcast is available at Spotify as StarFall 2029, and it will be so. We're going to run 9 weekly episodes from now until 4/13/2029, when I will stop doing podcasts for myself. I will still maybe do other podcasts beyond whatever the people want to be on, if they even exist. But see, there's going to be a giant meteor and zombies and aliens and all the rest of it. So, for now, recording, not live. But live. And so if you're around, glad to have you here. A little less focused on questions. Didn't have any questions again this week, and that's okay. I think the Ask the Pastor phase of my show life is kind of over anyway. So next week, expect for StarFall to be on or done by the time you log in right now, 7:45 p.m. Central. And then if that's not working for you and you don't want to watch it late, but rather have seen it live, you got to check in a little bit sooner. We'll try to keep it as close to the time as posted as possible. But if not, again, Spotify is the way to go. It'll show up a week later, and you can just listen there. So, hallelujah, everybody. Hey, it's been a long ride. It's been a long ride since I started doing YouTube, WeTV, into the Facebook world, KFUO, on and on. And I'm tired. I'm seriously feeling the weight of the thing. But I'm not ready to be done yet, because I feel like we're just at the time where we can really do the most good work. And I think that means both all the places where, I've seeded stuff that's happening without me now. I just saw Sharper Iron. Someone's like, I love Sharper Iron. I'm like, yes. What a win, right? But then also right here, what StarFall can become as we keep an eye on what's going on in the government, as we keep an eye on what's going on in the culture, as we keep an eye on what's going on in the sky, as we keep an eye on what's going on in storytelling. That's kind of the direction, war, comets, poetry, StarFall 2029. He is risen. That makes you pay for. You're immortal now. He's not going to be long anyway. Rock on. Hallelujah.
Was that worth $1? Click the Patreon link in the show notes to sign up. Pretty please?